Okay, we're back from a nice break after making our template cut file. It's not actually truly a cut file yet. We'll use this, however, to make our score file. So what I'm going to do, this is kind of cool about Illustrator, is I can just duplicate this entire layer. And so the reason why I do that is I don't want to redraw anything, and I can just turn these into dotted lines. So I'm going to take this cut file layer, and I've got my template layer turned off. I'm going to drag that to the layers, new layer button, and basically when you do that, it duplicates it. So I now have two cut file layers. One just says copy. I want to rename that, so I double click on the actual name, and it'll turn it all blue. I don't even have to highlight it. It highlights it itself, so I don't need to click and drag or anything. Just double click. I'm going to call this score file. You could want it, if you wanted to, you could call it the fold file. Proper terminology though is scoring. And then I'm deselecting. Now I've turned off my cut file layer. I clicked on the eyeball and it's off. I'm turning back on my original layer so I can see what things need to be dotted lines. Now there are a couple things that may need to move as well. One in particular, it looks like they have a little divot here that I need to deal with. Not a problem, super easy. And that probably is the same thing on the other side. Just a little divot, so when this is folded, it's easier to tuck in there. Other than that, it looks pretty simple. So I'm now going to turn off my layer 1. And basically, as far as simplicity goes, I'm selecting on all of these lines, and right now I'm just going to make them all dotted lines. This is really super simple. So a couple of different ways we could attack this is when I have these selected, because they are filled with none and have a stroke of a black line, the stroke information comes up here at the control panel. So right now it says it's a basic line. Now it doesn't have a dotted line up here or here. So these are brush types. So I'm not finding what I need up here, but it does have the thickness of the line up here, which I'm not going to change. So it looks like instead of using up above here, I'm going to have to go to, let me select all those, I have to go to the actual stroke panel, turn off my swatches. I'm going to organize things a little bit better here. Move my layers panel back over here, and Pathfinder, I'll just close it. So here's your strokes panel. It's got 3 lines. They graduate smaller as they go up. And so that's the icon. You fly this out, and you'll have to click on this little double arrow next to the word stroke. That extends out the options for these different lines. We want a dash line here, and so I'm going to click on dash line. Now by default, this is a 12-point dash with, I believe, a 12-point gap. If you wanted to change that, you can. You don't have to, I don't think in this case, but if your box is smaller, those dashes might be too long. So let's say I wanted to shorten these dashes and the gaps. So I can type in here 6 points, 6 PT, and then I can, for my gap, it'll automatically go to 6 point. Now if you wanted to do a variety of gap sizes and dash sizes, you could. Most of the time though, it's all the same. Illustrator does have the option to have your dashes with exact lengths, or it has it so it aligns the dashes and corners and path ends to be nice and tidy. In this case, it's really nice and tidy, meaning in the corners of my dashes, they all meet up. If I had the other option, which preserves the exact dash and gap lengths, things look a lot more sloppy and they don't line up. So this option is the better option, which aligns the dashes and corners. It ends paths in nice positions. It's just prettier. Everything looks all nice and organized. So I have the dashes, but all of these don't need to be dashes. So again, I'm going to turn on my layer that is, let me move this up here. I'll bring that way up since I'm using it a lot. My layer that is my template. I don't need these edges to be dashes, so I can actually start deleting some things that I don't need. If I want to, I could even make these lines blue so I can see the difference between, them and the template layer. This is temporarily a thing I'm doing. So I can say, okay, I know, now I can tell the blue ones are the ones I drew and everything else is what's underneath it. So this helps eliminate some confusion. Now my layer 1 is still locked. You never want to move that. It's good. So I'm still on my score file. I'm going to grab my my selection tool, which is black arrow. I'm going to drag over the boxes that I don't need. I'm actually going to delete them. So I'm just clicking on them and deleting them. If I don't need a dotted line there, I'm going to get rid of it. So this one's a little tricky. I'll deal with him in a minute. Get rid of that. Get rid of these flaps. I got dotted lines here, but I don't there, so I can get rid of that box and this box. Now let's turn this layer off and on so we can see what we have. Okay, so dotted lines. This right here doesn't need to be dotted, but that's a cut, so I'm going to have to break these up a little bit. This one right here doesn't need to be dotted, but I still need that there, so let me just see if I can delete that, see what it looks like. Just turn off that guy. Okay, so I didn't need a dotted line here or here. That's a fold line. But I do need a dotted line out here, so I'm going to rob from this guy and put him in here. Then once I get that straight, I'll put him over here on this side. So let me turn that off again. I'm going to get rid of this one here. Everything else is fold. Yep, lots and lots of folds on this one. So on this, you know what? I'm even going to get rid of this little flap here. Don't even need him. The reason why is I can just draw a line and make it dotted right within this area. So I'm going to get my line tool, draw a line, hold down the shift key so it stays in position. And I may have to adjust it as far as where it's positioned. But that's a 1 point blue line. It's still on my score file. Looks like a good thing for now until I turn this on. This may not be accurately centered to this box. Okay, there is a super easy way to center something without having to move it over here and see if it's right. It's called the Align tool. There's an Align panel here. It's fabulous. And basically, I'm going to make this, I'm going to put these on the same layer for just a moment. I need this blue line on the same layer as this black box. To do that, I click on the blue line. This is really interesting. This is different than most software. Right now, that's in the score file layer. There's a little box. It corresponds to the layer color. The layer color right now for this has been assigned for this is red. So I can click on that little box, and it indicates that this piece of art is selected. And I can drag it down to my cut file layer, and they are now on the same layer. So that's a really cool, you don't have to cut and paste or anything, you just drag it down. I just want these to be on the same layer temporarily. I also want this box shape to be in the front, so I'm going to bring him to the front. The reason why I'm going to align to the topmost object. He's in the right position. I don't know about this guy here. So I'm grabbing the line, dotted line, I'm grabbing the box, and I'm going to my Align panel. And I want those center aligned. So I'm looking at this one. I want a vertical align center, but if I click on that, that might not work out very well because there's also this align to area. Let's see what it's going to align to. Okay, it is going to align to the selection. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean it's going to shift? It may. I can always move it back. It's no big deal. So I'm going to align to the section. I'm going to click on it, and oops, it did move it. Now, let's see what happens. I'm going to hit undo. I already undid it. Let's see what happens if we go to align to key object. Now, key object is probably the guy in the front. If I click on the vertical align center, that front object did not move. This one moved just slightly, I'm thinking, hopefully. If not, I can always align to selection and see if they move. Nope, they don't move, so that was how you did it. If he's in the front, he is the key selection. So I just brought him to the front. Now I'm going to pop this little guy back to the score file by clicking only on him and then taking his little indicator and bringing him back up to the score file. Okay. Now the reason why both of these layers are colored red is because I copied my cut file. So if you want this layer to be a slightly different color, you can make it a different color.
It seems like the box did move.
Did it move?
Looks
Let's zoom. Let's see if that box moved. It may have. Ooh, it did move slightly. Ooh, we don't like that. Let's try that again. I think I'll just center align them to each other and then pop them back in position. So let's go here, go to the align panel. Let's just align to the selection, center it. Then we'll zoom in. Oops. I don't like scrubby zoom and I need to turn it off. And we'll move this so it pops right in there. Both of them were selected when they popped in there. So thank you for seeing that. Perfect now. And now I need to deselect, grab just that little dotted line and move him to the score area. Now, I do not want to have to worry about this being in the right position over there. So you know how I just love to copy and paste stuff. So I'm prematurely moved him back up here to the score area. So let me bring him back down to the cut. I'm going to delete all that's out except for, let me turn off that. I'm going to delete all that entire flap because I don't want to guess. I'm going to grab these plus the little score line and I'm going to bring those over and then I'll flip them. I'll reflect them, making sure it's the right kind of reflection. There we go, perfect position. So I don't want to have to guess where he went. Now, if I want that score line to go back to the score file, I just click on the little, and turn on the score file. Click on the little indicator, drag them up, they're now on the score file. Very cool little way to deal with layers. Now when I bring back up the template, there are a couple other things I'm seeing here that might be problematic. This line actually breaks, so I've got to pay attention to that. Deal with that. So I got to break that line. So let me turn on the cut file and the score file. I'll zoom in. And this is kind of actually, I'm trying to think what I can do here. I want to end. I actually want to cut that and end it. Illustrator can be a little funky about this stuff. So let me turn this off. I know exactly where to stop and start because I have my score line. I'm going to draw a path across there and see if I can delete that. Now with this, I imagine I'll have some problems. Let's find out. Oops. I'm going to fill it with a color, stroke it with nothing right now. So it's filled with a color. And let me stroke it with nothing. I'm close enough here. And what I'm trying to do is I'm going to try to minus that segment out of this line that's been created, this shape. Now this can be a little tricky. We have to look at this a couple different ways. Make sure I'm on the right layer, make sure he's on the cut file. I'm going to hold down the shift key and grab this box. Now if I go to the Pathfinder and do a minus front, it usually makes, let me turn off the score file so you can see, it makes a solid area. We don't want that. That is not, we want it to break and end and not have it to continue on. So this is not what we want. So let me think of another way to deal with this. Let's go to Object, Compound Path, and make a compound path. That didn't work either. Okay, so I've got to kind of outsmart the computer. Let me zoom in. I'm going to make sure this box is selected. There we go. There is actually a little cut tool in here in Illustrator. You can kind of slice it. It's under the eraser tool. There we go. There's a knife tool where you can go, okay, I want this to end right here. So we're going to shiv it. We're going to just go, psh. We want you to end right there. Now I can bring this back. And I'm going to do the same thing at the bottom. I'm going to cut that in the right spot. Now that doesn't look too pretty. Let me delete this guy. But this segment should be broken apart now. Should be. Let's see if it did. Doesn't look like it did. Oh, Illustrator. Okay, I'm gonna hit Command Z a few times. It didn't work. That's yucky. I'll get rid of that shape. So that should have just cut it. Sometimes things work and sometimes they don't. Let's try that again. Maybe it's the scissor tool. Let's try the scissors instead. Scissor tool. Chop, chop. Please use the scissor tool on a segment or an anchor point, but not an endpoint. Okay, there is no anchor point there, so I have to add an anchor point right here, because it told me that's what I need to do. Bring it down just a bit. Mathematically, that line is a little off, and I'm going to add one here. Now I can scissor it. Oh, come on now. It's wanting to argue with you. There we go. We're scissoring that, and we're scissoring that. You have to be perfect. Then you delete it. It just deleted it, but it also has this one for this guy that needs scissored. We'll show you here in just a second. Oh, for heaven's sakes. Try not to have bad language here. So you'll see that's gone. But oh, I had that one there too. Oh, great. So I have to add a path to this little guy here, but where? Let me move it over so I can see. I'll move it back. I have to add a point here and one down here. And then I scissor it. Click right on that point, ting, right on that point, ting, and then get the white arrow tool and delete it. Okay, then I'll move him back. Gosh, that was just a lot of work for that little bit of fuss. A lot of work. So I'm like, you know what? That was a lot of work. I'm going to copy and paste it and bring it over here. So let me make sure that this is still the score file. I'm going to bring him back down to the cut file. We're just modifying him, getting back and forth. I'm going to delete all these guys over here, bring these guys in, hold down the Alt key, the Shift key, then I'm going to flip it or reflect it and make sure that it's in the right spot. Sure is. And the last thing I'm going to do is bring the little blue lines back up to the score layer and save it. That was a lot of work for just a little tiny line, but it's worth it. Okay, now we're going to get rid of a few things on this cut file. We don't need all these solid lines here. They're all dotted lines. So this is going to mess with my head just for a second. So let me bring up this cut file. I don't need this guy anymore, or this guy, or this guy. I need part of him, so I got to figure that out. I don't need that guy, or this guy, or this guy, or this guy, or that guy, or that guy, because those are all cut files, or score files. Okay, so there we go. We've got those taken care of. Now for the cut file, really, let's see what else we need here. I do need these lines. I may have to add those back. I don't need these lines. You know what I'm going to do here? Let's see. This is getting a little complicated, but let's try this. I am going to grab all of these middle parts. I'm going to fill them with white or color, any color. Oops, not stroke them with white. Fill them with white or yellow or whatever. Well, that's missing altogether. So I need a shape back there. There's nothing in there. I'm just going to draw a big square. Just make sure it lines up to everything else. You'll wonder why I'm doing this, but here in a second you'll notice why I'm doing it. Okay, so I'm going to grab this big old shape, take it all the way past the curve on these, cover it up, make sure it's aligned properly. Sometimes you have to click off and make sure it's aligned. There we go. And I am going to grab all of these parts and I'm going to merge them. Merge is in the Pathfinder panel and it just makes it all one solid shape. So let's see if that's appropriate. It is. Now I am going to put a stroke on that. It needs to put that 1 point stroke back on there. So now I'm going to fill it with none or white, either way. So when I look at my cut file, it's going to cut here. I don't want it to cut there, so I'm going to break some stuff apart. I'm going to have to get the scissor thing going on. This is a cut. That's a cut. So that's a fold, though. So I'm going to have to break some of this stuff up. I don't want the die to be created to the point where this is going to get cut. So this is going to take a little bit of surgery, literally. So I'm going to go back to my cut file, which I have here. I'm going to have to add an anchor point for me to be able to scissor that. So I'm going to add an anchor point right there. Cool thing is we used a grid and everything snapped too. And then I'm going to add another anchor point. Oh, I was slightly off on that. See how that's got a little skip in it? Oops. Not going to worry about it though. I'm going to add another anchor point right there. Looks like there already is one. Not sure why. Nope, it's not there for real. I don't know why. It must be the center. Oh, there's an anchor point there. Then I'm going to get my scissors and I'm going to scissor that. I'm going to click on this and I'm going to go back here. Oh, I need to add an anchor point right here. Add an anchor point here because this is a fold line. We don't want that cutting. Then scissor it. And it just broke this apart into a section. Now I have to do the same thing with this guy here. He's already got anchor points, so I can scissor this guy here and this guy here and then delete that. Now I have an open area, but it's all accurate. So that needed to be a solid shape. Now I'm not going to copy and paste that shape. Actually, I could. I could just take this guy, hold down the Shift and Option key, bring him up here, snap him into place, and flip him, and that would work out pretty well. So I'm going to reflect him, get him on a horizontal, hit OK, then get rid of the guy underneath him. So that's one way of dealing with that. Figure out where he is. Arrow him over. There's two of them, so I want to make sure. And it's not like InDesign. InDesign you can actually click through stuff. Here you can't, so you can go through layers and do it, or sometimes I just arrow one thing over, delete it, and then just arrow it back. It's quicker than having to dig through my layers panel. Now since this shape is one continuous shape here, I'm going to have to, oh look, I'm going to have to scissor a lot of things here. Oh, what's that? Perspective? No. I want to scissor here and here, because I need that cut line, but that's a fold. And I need to scissor from here to there. So I've got a little bit more scissoring to do. This guy, he's got a solid line there that's got to go. So let me scissor him. See, we worked so hard on building this, and now we're scissoring it to death. So I'm going to select him, get my scissor tool, get rid of this right here, and this right here. Zoom out, make sure things are doing the right thing. Get my white arrow tool, grab that little segment if I can find it. Let me pull him up. Oh, fabulous. That little segment there needs to go. And since that segment's cooperating, I'm just going to pull him up, holding down the Shift key while I'm doing it, or just delete that little anchor point. And now we've got one continuous, what appears to be one continuous thing. Gosh, that was a lot of work. Now I got to do it to the other side. Kind of. Let's see what I'm dealing with here. Yeah, I'm just going to have to scissor this guy, and then I can copy and paste this. So I'm going to copy and paste this over here after I add an anchor point here and there and get rid of it. So there's a lot of copying and pasting going on. And about the time you think you're done with something, you're like, oh, darn it, I need to do that again. So we have an anchor point. It looks like it's already there. So I'm going to scissor that. Get out of here. Go down to the bottom one down here. See if there's an anchor point. No anchor point in there, it doesn't look like. Oh, there it is. Scissor that. That's selected, so I'm going to delete it. Now, these guys, I don't really need those, so I'm going to delete them. I'm going to grab these guys and I'm going to bring them over, snap them to, and transform them, reflecting them. Probably a vertical in this case. Perfect! Hit OK. Should be in the right position, as long as it's snapped there to the edge. And now I have my cut file. This is cut, that's folded, that's folded, that's folded, that's folded, that's folded, that's cut, that's folded. Let's turn on the folded stuff. There we go. I should save that because that took a lot of work. And then I need to tell it where to glue it. So I'm going to turn this on. I just need to put a nice dotted line, big, fat, round little dots across that. And that just lets me know that I need to glue it. So I'll just put that on the score file for now. Really doesn't matter if it's on the cutter or score file. And that doesn't even have to be perfectly centered. But I'll just draw a nice little line up here. Excuse me, Pathfinder. And get my swatches, or my stroke panel, thank you. And what kind of thing do I have here? Well, let's see. I have a, not that, let's see. Where is my little options here? I'm wanting for just a regular old dotted line. There's arrowheads. Where did they go? There used to be a dotted line in here. No, that's not it. This is unusual. Okay, they've done something where they're putting these somewhere else now. There should be a dotted line profile in here, and I'm not sure where it's gone. Okay. Well, we'll just do, geez. That's crazy. No dotted line profile. Fabulous. Fabulous. Let's do, it doesn't show a dash line. This is unusual. Okay, so this is unusual. I had to do a little research because they've gotten rid of some, oh, look at that. They've gotten some new neat things in there. That's cute. Doesn't work. So I'm having a hard time getting this to work, but maybe I'll just do a dotted line, a dash line for now. That doesn't even seem to be working, so let's draw this line again. Just does not seem to be working today. Oh, we'll just make it thicker. Oh, there we go. Yeah, it's not pretty, but it's not what I wanted. I have to figure out what they're doing with these new brushes and stuff. Not what I wanted, but hey, you know, sometimes you just don't always get what you want. And I'll just have to do a little research on what they've done with the new changes here. Why it's so hard to get a circle dotted line, I don't know. So I'll have to figure that out. But there's a workaround. So that's my glue line. Not very attractive, but it's there. May increase my dashes just a smidge. There we go. Really like those to be dots, but I'll have to figure that out later. And again, if you click on this guy that makes them uniform, it spreads them out so they perfectly align, have the same segment starting as end. If you use the other one, it just does it from left to right and it ends wherever it wants to end. So I always use this little guy here. So that this may be confusing. If you take the video slowly, though, you'll kind of get it. You know, take your time. I make this stuff look kind of easy. I know I skip and I get a little flipped out here and there because new challenges pop up, but it's not too horribly bad. So we have a score file, which also has our glue area. We have our cut file, which anything that gets sliced with a knife is got a solid line. And then originally was our inspiration, which was down here, which I don't even need that anymore. So I saved that. And guess what I do with this next? I could print it, yeah, but I'm going to put it in InDesign. So I'm going to create an InDesign file for my stuff. For me, I'm going to have to make, oh, hold on, let me show you something before we get there. This artboard is a little bit large, and in Illustrator you can adjust the artboard size. There is a little square with little, looks like little crop marks around it. If you double click that, or single click it rather, excuse me, double click gives you this window. If you single click it, you can then pull your artboard up so it kind of snaps to the shape of that work, so you don't have such a big, vast space. So, and then I hit the Enter key, hit OK, or just click off of it, and that adjusted my artboard. And you can have more than one artboard in Illustrator. In this case, we only need one. So I'm going to save that. And then I'm going to go to InDesign, create a new document. This document should have enough room for a bleed. Let me investigate the size of this. So the size of this, the width is 11.5 by about 11.5. So I should probably make this at least, I'll make my InDesign document 12 by 12. It gives me a little extra room to work with. So when I get into InDesign, I want a 12-inch by 12-inch document. Yeah, that'll be okay. And I don't need to worry about guides or grids or anything. I'm going to take off my margins. I'm going to put those at 0 because those can get confusing. And move this and hide Illustrator for just a moment. There we go. Take off my text trap. And when I place this, File, Place, I'm going to put it in its own layer. So we haven't really talked much about layers in InDesign, but we will definitely want this in its own layer. Oops. So I pop that in. Usually it's best to center that. So there is an alignment window here too. It's under Window, Object and Layout, Align. It's not floating up in here like the other guy. And I can tell this to align to the page. So instead of aligning to a selection, I align to the page. I want it centered both horizontally and vertically. That's perfectly centered to that page. Close that. Don't need it anymore. And I'm going to save this. And I'm going to call it, we'll call it Project 6 First Draft. I should definitely create a Project 6 folder because I'm starting to collect some stuff here. I'll start putting them into that folder. And what we want here is we want some layers showing up. So I'm going to go to Window and Layers if they're not already showing up. I'm not sure what happened to everything. And I want to double click on this layer and I want to call it Cut and Score layer. And what I do is I lock that layer and then I start designing over the top of it. So this is where I put my design. So I'm going to put some fake design. And by the way, guys, the cool thing about this is, let's say you wanted this segment right here to have some color. We might want to put some grids on here and have snap to grid and all that. We might want to set this exactly like we did in Illustrator, so that way we aren't guessing at where things stop and start. Now that's not accurate when you zoom in; it's way off. So we might want to pull some, get our grids and guides going. But let's say I wanted this whole thing to be yellow. Man, my essentials are all like gone. Let's see if I can get. There we go. Trying to get my tools and stuff back. There. So let's say I wanted to fill this with yellow. I would usually use a yellow that's specified. I don't want a stroke on this. But this is bleeding off of the edge here just fine. If you wanted to, you could even bring this layer up to the top. It should be filled with none, so you don't have, if you filled everything with white, we wouldn't be able to see through here. But if you wanted to see where things are, you can bring that layer up. Now the only bad thing is it does bleed off to the edge here. So you want this to go past the cut line, at least 1/8 of an inch. So it does bleed off of this cut line, but then out here it does not. Ooh. So sometimes what I have to do on these solid shapes is I have to add anchor points just like I did in Illustrator. I want one here. I want one about here, maybe one here. And I have to go with the wide arrow tool, oops, excuse me, grabs the whole object, hold on the shift key and just grab that anchor point, click on it and then click on it again. So I'm going to have to pull these out here and make my bleeds. This might be a different color, so I'd have this go at a different angle. So your shapes oftentimes are kind of funky because you have to manufacture your own bleed. I don't care if I went into the software and said, hey, give me 1/8 of an inch bleed. That doesn't count in this case. This I have to actually pull graphics so that they bleed. So let's turn off this layer. That started out as a rectangle, but then it ended up as a shape that is trapezoidal to some degree because I needed a bleed. Okay, so this will get a little wacky in InDesign because you'll have to deal with custom shapes. So that can get kind of funky. Now once I have the design on here, I'm just going to drag that guy over. Let's pretend this is all designed and ready to go. This is where snap to grids would turn out real nicely. Here I have a flipper here. Oh, crap. crumbs. Let me flip it from this edge. Well, it's just fabulous. Get over here. So let's say I had type and all sorts of stuff. Well, that layer would look, your design layer is just, you shouldn't have any strokes on a lot of stuff. So make sure that you don't have black around everything. You hit the W key, it'll show you. There's no black around everything. And by default, it wants to put strokes on things. But when I print, I actually print I print this layer by itself. File, print. I put the paper in. Right now on this, I'm going to just deal with 11 by 17 paper. This is not good because my project is bigger than 11 by 17, and I have 12 by 18 paper, which I need to make sure you guys have this Thursday. I need to get you all a couple sheets of that 12 by 18, so that way when it's time for you to print, you're not having problems. And I'll get you the thicker stuff so we can work with it. But right now I'm stuck because I need paper. But I would typically, let me cancel this for just a second. What I would do is I would turn on my design layer and print it, then turn it off, turn on my cut layer and print it. Those are two separate pieces of paper. This I would not print on fancy paper. That's on just plain old cheapo thin paper. Then I tape them together. I align them up on a light table on the window. I tape them together so they align. I use and this is on top. This would be on top. The piece of paper on top. I would use that to score it. Again, I'd have this taped up. I would use it to cut it. I cut through this layer, this paper, and the heavy paper underneath it. And assuming they're lined up, when you score first, then you cut second. If everything's lined up and you taped everything down well, when everything pops out, it should be absolute perfection. Then everything's scored. You just fold it like we did earlier on this little guy here. You just fold it and put it together. So these need to be turned off independently. Print one on cheapy paper. Print the next one on nice thicker paper. Tape them together. Score it. Cut it. It comes apart. It just falls right out after you cut it. And you start folding and stuff. You guys get that? It's not that difficult. Just two different things. Okay. I'm going to save this. That's a long demonstration today. It's almost, class time is almost over. So let me save this. I'm still recording.